Thank you, Robert. I mean, Robert has really done a great presentation. Now, what I'm going to do is change the mood a bit, take you into a lighter topic. Then we'll go to ancient Egypt. Can all of you who have some link with ancient Egypt or anything, just raise your hands. I want to see how many are out there. Okay, by the time we finish, the rest of you will raise their hands too, so. Okay. Now, but we ask ourselves, why does everybody seem to have a link with ancient Egypt? Why do all cultures, I mean, why does every capital in the world somehow have to have an obelisk and bring it in the center? Why? I mean, we ask ourselves, why ancient Egypt? I mean, there's so many ancient civilizations, but why ancient Egypt? So we're going to go into this, and we're discussing ancient Egypt not as a country. We're not discussing now the country of Egypt, no, but we're discussing a phenomena called Egypt that plays a certain role in the collective subconscious, and especially in the Western civilization, the Western world. So you ask yourself, well, Egypt is so far away, you know, in the Middle East, how come it's at the core of our collective unconscious here? And that's what we're going to go into today. So, you see, these are everywhere. When you go, everybody seems to link himself to ancient Egypt. You see, obelisks are everywhere, all around the world. They take obelisks from ancient Egypt and put them there. It has to do with energy, you know. When they plan the cities like an energetic talisman in a way to change the energy of the people and to put a sort of a spiritual aspect into everyday life, they plan their cities using connections on sacred power spots. They use the avenues to link sacred power spots. But then comes a point, like any modern instrument that you develop, electronic instruments, it needs the energy of life to activate that plan. Now they saw that the Egyptians had those very powerful obelisks on the power spots that could radiate that energy and all of a sudden activate the whole city, becomes alive with that spiritual energy. But what was lost couldn't be recreated. There was something in the ancient Egyptian obelisks, in the proportions, the material, and all that, that you needed to have, otherwise you couldn't activate your city. And so, because those cities were, let's say, planned using ancient knowledge by societies like the Freemasons or the Crucians and all that, all had a hand in this. And when the Freemasons came and planned, like Washington, Paris, even Cairo, when they planned those cities, they found, okay, we have some knowledge, but we don't have it all. I mean, how did it work? It's a dead thing, it doesn't really work. So the only way to do it, instead of trying to put anything in there, why don't I go and get it from Egypt? If it's there, why bother? I mean, all I can do is just take it and bring it and put it at the center of my city. So you bring one put in Washington, you bring one put in Rome, you bring one put in Paris, all the cities in the world, so you bring them over to bring life into that city. So, but to do that, that means Egypt is already ingrained in the depth of your soul. I mean, otherwise, why bother? I mean, why do all that? Yeah. See, where is this one? You know this one? That one is here in Asheville. The people here should know that one. But here, you see, it's a monument in Asheville. It looks like an ancient Egyptian obelisk put here, but it is built here. You know, you notice it's built stones stacked. It's a stacking of stones. So it just doesn't have the energy properties, because It should be one piece of granite with a certain length, a certain wavelength, and it should vibrate like a musical chord and sending this vibration all over the nation. So when you imitate the obelisks of ancient Egypt, they just don't work. See, you can do what you want, you'll always come back to us. Okay, see, even your dollar, huh? If the dollar here, then you ask yourself, what is so important that makes people, even in their everyday money, in their practical consumer life, what makes them think that they should have an Egyptian pyramid in there? And they felt that an Egyptian pyramid was linked to certain energies that had to do with prosperity, because spirituality is prosperity. I mean, the notion that to be a spiritual person, you have to be a poor person wearing a cloak and sitting and not having money to do anything and begging, this is not true spirituality. True spirituality means work, means putting harmony in work and all that. Putting harmony in work, that means you achieve excellence in your work. When you achieve excellence in your work, that means you achieve prosperity. So they thought, okay, so we need the pyramids, we need those concepts to put in our dollar bill. And this prosperity brings illumination with it. So you have the all-observing eye of Horus in Egypt. So you have it there, you see. So the link with Egypt, it's not just on a personal level that you have. It's sort of a collective on a national level. You feel that Egypt is part of everything here. It's part of that. We want to see why. It's, I mean, why don't you feel the same thing, for example, with, I mean, we're a country in Africa down there. Why not have the same feeling with, let's say, Zimbabwe or Ghana, and feel that this is in the depth of your soul? Somehow, yeah, somehow you chose Egypt. Why don't you choose Italy or Germany and all that? No, you choose Italy and find the Italians choosing Egypt, so you go to Egypt. so yes. So now we'll go deeper into all that. These are some of the reliefs that we see in the walls of ancient Egypt. Now, you expect, when I speak about ancient Egypt, I speak about 5,000 years of history. I go back 5,000 years, when the pyramid was built or something like that. And this seems to you to, 5,000 years. I mean, America is maybe just over 200 years old. So how can a country be 5,000 years old? But now I'm going to speak about Egypt in a different way. Not the 5,000 year Egypt, no, the 36,000 year Egypt. And they'll tell you how it all started. Why am I speaking not of the recorded history that you know of Egypt, although that's good enough, 5,000 years is good enough. No, why am I attempting to go further back? Well, there's a very strange fact about ancient Egypt. When you look to ancient Egypt, you have about, in the range of 3000 BC in that area, 5,000 years ago, you have what we call the Old Kingdom of Egypt. Because we divide those 3,000 years, let's say, into of pharaonic recorded history, into 3 eras: an Old Kingdom, a Middle Kingdom, and a New Kingdom. In the middle, between them, there were, because in this area there were lots of invasions in the area, some by the Hittites, these were tribes in Syria, and some by Hyksos, and different tribes, Semitic tribes, came into Egypt. Then the whole pharaonic system broke for about, maybe through occupations, for maybe 70 to 100 years, and then it was restored again. The Egyptians restored it again, and then it happened the second time. So it divides Egyptian history into 3 eras. Now, there is something strange. You feel that what is supposed to be the beginning 3,000 years ago, instead of seeing something beginning and developing, you see something strange. It starts up there. you find, for example, 3,000 years ago, you find that the first ruler of ancient Egypt, called Menes or Narmer, it's recorded there that he unified the administrative system of north and south and unified the administrative system, the governmental administrative system, and the very detailed tax systems and tax laws and all that. So you say, well, he came and sort of unified those things, restructured them. That means that they were all there before that. So Egypt couldn't have started at that time if he's doing that. So, and then you see that it begins with things like the Great Pyramids, like things like that. And as time goes by, things get smaller in size, less. So it is as if the ancient Egypt we know, the history we know, is just remnants of something else. Because if something starts at a certain time, and then after 1,000 years, by the time of the Middle Kingdom, 2000 BC, to them the pyramids were just remote people exactly like to us. Whether it's 5,000 or 1,000, you see, it's exactly the same. So, and then you go back to the Middle Kingdom, that's where you find all the temples, the huge temples, huge in size. But then you find in Egypt, in the Old Kingdom, some megalithic temples that date from some unknown time, where the blocks of stone are 300 tons. And the great temples that you find later may be 50 tons, maybe 60 tons. But if you find somebody raises 2 columns of stones that are 200, 300 tons each, puts a stone above like a gate. Well, just putting a 300 stone over 2 other stones without cracking it in the middle or something like that, and especially in that size. And the strange thing, stones of that size, they stick together in a way you can't bring a razor blade in there. And sometimes it would be easy to make a straight edge. No, around the corner, you find the 300-ton stone just curving into the corner like this, and then being cut after the corner. And then the other one comes and fits into it. Okay, I mean, it's enough if we lift the 300-ton stone, but then having to sort of anchor it in another stone. This is, I mean, unbelievable how those things are done. So it leads us to think that there was a great civilization, and Egypt, actually, what we see as history of Egypt is a civilization that starts declining slowly. Of course, declining is very, I mean, it doesn't really decline with all those achievements in ancient Egypt, but if you follow them, it's like remnants, going slowly down, things being lost, knowledge being lost, until we reach our modern era. So we ask ourselves, what was there before? So we have a very strange situation in the chronology, historical chronology of ancient Egypt. Most of the chronologies are written by priests who lived about 400 BC, 500 BC, who had in their temples documents that dated thousands of years. So they have in the temples all the names of every pharaoh in every dynasty for so many years. So you find the Old Kingdom, the New Kingdom, and the Middle Kingdom, all the kingdoms, they have each king, how many years did he govern Egypt, and the second one, and names, and very interesting things. From the first dynasty, the 3 eras are divided into so many dynasties, about 36 or something like that. I don't know the number exactly, but so each dynasty comes, and it's a ruler, his son, and all that. You'll find from the first dynasty, we have already lady pharaohs governing Egypt. even in the first dynasty, 3000 BC, you find one name, then a lady pharaoh governing Egypt. There's even a lady pharaoh governing Egypt before the first dynasty even. The name is there on some of the temples. So you see, those people must have been very, very advanced. So what happens there? So you have this chronology going back to the first dynasty, 5,000 years. But in reality, the chronology doesn't stop there. All the scholars in the world said, well, let's put a line there. Yeah, it's enough, you know. It's enough going back 5,000 years. Where do you want to take us before that? I mean, 5,000 is enough. Because what is before that is the description, the names of the kings, the descriptions of what they did, and all that seems more like mythology. So we will call, it's a decision we take. We draw a line here, a red line. What's below the line is true history. What's above the line is mythological kings. But if you have 36,000 years of dynasties, of kings, every king, how many years did he reign, what he did, and every detail for 36,000 years, names, names, names. If you want to write mythology, you wouldn't keep writing for every few years you have a new pharaoh and all that, and go back 36,000 years. Why would you do it? I mean, you just get tired writing it. If you, yeah, if you're writing, you know, on stone. So there was this Greek, not Greek, but in the Greco-Roman area, when the Greeks came to Egypt after Alexander conquered Egypt and all that. There's in the Greco-Roman period, there's a Greek priest called Manetho. And this is one of the people whose chronology we take today in Egyptology as the official chronology of Egypt. But here it's a bit embarrassing because Manetho in the official chronology, he still goes back 36,000 years. So they drew the line, and even in Manetho's work, this is official and the rest is not. So let's see what happened before that. What was there 30,000 years ago, 36,000 years ago? What was the concept of, what was Egypt at that time? To understand that, we have to go into the human perception, the human mind, to try to understand what was there, because we try to understand that with our way of thinking. And you never get anywhere if because the only way each one of you actually relates to ancient Egypt is not through some conscious study, but in some form of some unconscious, something in the depth of the unconscious that says there's a link there. So it has to be on another level than the purely intellectual left brain type thinking. So we have to imagine that humanity developed from the beginning of humanity on Earth, developed from sort of a right brain type consciousness. That's the metaphoric words we use today, but in reality the brain works as one. There are some differences between right and left, but we use now the word right brain type consciousness, left brain type consciousness. So the right brain type consciousness, this is where the senses in the beginning are still not very well developed in their analytical way of perceiving things into every detail and all that like today. I mean, you already see a difference each generation now. When we take, for example, any modern computer game or something like this, and the speed that our senses can grasp the motion of a vehicle there or something is totally different from what our child will do. Already this difference of one generation, their senses are so much sharper You think, okay, they're not sharper. No, we're much sharper. Okay, try to go into one of those games and avoid things like that, like a child, you know, of 8 or 10 years would do it like that, enjoying his game. We take it like that and we crash here into this. And we say, no, you take the child, like, look at daddy. Daddy drives sports cars, you know. I'm a race driver. Come on, I'll show you, you know. And you go in there, and the kid just beats you in everything because the senses have developed. They're getting more detailed. So if we go the other way backwards, there was a time when, in the beginning of development of humanity, the senses were still in the beginning of their development. Our senses work through the left brain. Of course, left brain type perception. I'm not speaking local here. But what happens, the 5 senses, once they work, they go into more detail of making our 3D worlds. The better they become, the sharper our 3D world gets. But there's another thing that happens. They create separateness. They create an ego. Our character is just, our ego has to do with the memories, the thing that our 5 senses have gathered, puts in our memory bank. So we have created, it creates an ego. By creating an ego, that means it creates me and the other. So separateness is there. You are here and the world is here. So now we think in egos, me and that thing. So I have to personify everything in front of me in order to interact with it. That's our modern way of doing it. It's very helpful because with the sharpening of the senses, we've developed our civilization, which is so advanced. So the senses now have done a very, very good job for us, developing the world of modern technology and information age and all that. But if at a price, we'll come to that later, if we go back to remote times, 30,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago, let's imagine what a human being in that era of ancient Egypt was. They have names in this chronology, so there's about so many years, maybe 20,000 years something, they were called the Shemsuhor. Shemsuhor is like saying the followers of Horus or something like that. And then before that, there was another dynasties, I don't know how many thousands of years, called the Netero. So they had names in their chronologies, but somehow the way they spoke about the lives of those people seemed completely supernatural to some of the Egyptologists. That's why they drew the line. And they said, no, I mean, this can't be real. I mean, yeah, it can't be. Well, like many of the people who work in alternative fields here, you know, your neighbor just throws the line and says, these guys can't be real. Yeah, so this is what happens initially. They can't be real, you know. It's a decision that we take. With this decision, it is closing a door in our own subconscious so that we can't go back, we can't even access the 40,000 years because we have consciously closed the door. Now, let us imagine what a human being there would be like. Now, a human being here is from the left brain consciousness of the world and all that. We're trying to, through many forms of synchronized brain, through right brain consciousness and all that, to access some of the depth of the soul through all our spiritual practices, through music and all those things. We're trying, but basically we are trapped into our ego. We are trapped into the separateness of us and the world. We're trapped in there. You could try, do what you want and say, okay, I'm going to sit and meditate. I'm one with the universe. I'm one with the world. I'm one with everything. That's very good. Very good, but not good enough. Yes, there's a bit of self-delusion in there. It's very good for what we are. But I'm speaking from the point of view of somebody in Egypt 40,000 years ago. It's It's a child's play with a toy. It's not real. Why is it not real? Now imagine a civilization going from the senses, from the perceived world, into trying to go into the subconscious. Freud tries to take us there, and then he scared us, So, yeah, he scared us. Death, wish, libido, and things like that. Then Jung came, and Jung had a lot of, let's say, affinity for Gnostic teachings in Egypt and all that. So he took that fear out and sort of started some archetypes for us and things like that. He took that fear out a bit so that we wouldn't be afraid to peek into the depth of our soul. But just peek, through keyhole, like this. Now, so we're going from left outward, we're trying to go in there. Now imagine the opposite. Somebody the senses are still very primitive. He lives in a right brain world. What would the right brain world be? Now, I'll try to explain to you how it would look like. First of all, a right brain world, when the senses are not anchoring you into the physical reality, then you perceive, through right brain consciousness, you perceive what is in the depth of your subconscious, because reality is a sort of projected reality from your brains. So at that time, when you project a reality, you're projecting something from deep levels of the subconscious, and it's the reality of the emotional dimension, of the astral world, the reality of the mental world, the reality of the spiritual world. So all of a sudden, what happens, they're living in the projected reality, becomes a subconscious reality, and this is the reality. It's deep in the subconscious, trying, to understand a bit the left side, but they're far away from understanding it. But what do they then understand? Do they see? They walk, first of all, there's no separateness. So they're in a reality. Imagine yourself, you're walking in a reality, you come after your house, you see the tree, good morning, how are you today? Fine, thank you, the flower, how are you today? Yeah, because you're in one reality, there's no separateness yet. So when there's no separateness yet, then on the astral plane, you meet all those different entities from the astral plane. They're walking with you. Hello there, how are you? And the other one, how are you? And then, so all what you see in history as the gods and all those things, they're walking with you. They're your everyday reality, So you're walking like that in the multidimensionality of the depth of the subconscious. This is the land of your dreams, the land of your things and all that, and the things of your beliefs. Now, because the door is closed, we try to understand there are angels there. And then you try to say, yes, I've seen an angel, I've felt an angel. Well, you haven't felt nothing compared to the people there who in the morning, hello, speak to the angel, how are you today, and how everything, because the angels are real, they can touch them, because when those planes are projected in front of you, they become solid. So to them, you see the angels, you see all the hierarchy of things that you've never dreamed of, right there, you're going to live it, all that. Of course, away from the physical, from our kind of modern world. You might love it so much, but there you'd be you're living in a totally different world. Mm-hmm. But that is a fantastic world. It's a world where you are one with the stars. You are one, the whole universe, and you are one. There's no separateness. So if I tell you, for example, did they have the religion? Religion from what? In my separateness, I need to be in a place, I need to imagine a personified God, or even an abstract God. I mean, even religion today, when you say God is abstract, or God is personified, it doesn't really make a difference. To them, both of those ideas are remote, because your abstract is totally different than their abstract. You imagine maybe the void and things like that. No, they're living in it and it's full, there's no void. There are angels and there's everything. Everything is in there. So everything that we believe in or we try to understand, or we call esoteric science and all that, we're describing their everyday life. So when somebody is describing the world like this, then it's what? You say, oh, you know, we are very intelligent, we know everything, huh? Oh, come on. What you're saying is nonsense, this is mythology. Okay? Take it or leave it. But that's what it was before the brain, before the senses achieved a personality, an ego or something, and achieved the separateness. You were one. And if you were one, now there was something. Language, every letter you said, you pronounce, was not a letter for communication, because you already communicated without the letters. I mean, you understood, you didn't need letters to communicate. When did you use a letter? I use this letter to do this thing, so I could use this letter to fly from one place to the other. I could use this letter to do that. So every letter, every vowel, everything was an energetic tool, because when they said something happened, but it was real. So even numbers, for example, they're not quantitative. When I needed to do this thing, if I put two things, I've already changed that thing in such a way. They're living in this dimension. And then the nicest thing about this, the whole knowledge that exists anywhere in the universe is there. If you think now today, aliens, they're very advanced. They're somewhere very advanced species. Well, if you're one with them, see, if it's all one, then okay, they're there for you. I mean, there's nothing advanced and all that, because their knowledge is there. I mean, you want knowledge about this, take it. You want knowledge about this, take it. Everything's in front of you. You're in the center. There's no you and knowledge. You are knowledge. And that's a very, very strange feeling. How can you be knowledge? How can, I mean, there's nothing you and that thing. How, for example, you think about love, you are love. How can I be love? Yeah, if I was at that time speaking, well, if you ask me, do you love somebody? What? Yeah. What are you saying? Do you love somebody? Well, I am love. But I don't understand you, see? It's a totally different concept. So now, it's a civilization moving from the core of the subconscious, moving up slowly, 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 towards where we are. But of course, they have the whole knowledge. If you could understand how it is living there, you would understand that all the advanced knowledge that they had and all that, it was normal. If you tell them aliens that mean me on earth and somebody else out there. How can it be when I'm one? We're all one. So it's a very strange way to describe it. Is strange, but it becomes solid in front of your eyes and you live in it is even stranger. And this is what was in Egypt in the time of the Neteru, in the time of the Shamsuhor. That was what was there in Egypt. So lots of those things came slowly down, but as humanity shifted in its brain, you started to lose those things. The angel that you spoke with every morning, your friend, you woke up, had breakfast with and all that, starts to be hazy and starts to disappear. Then one day you wake up and look for them and you don't see them anymore. They're there, but all of a sudden your reality is losing parts every day of that reality. Some parts are fading out because somehow you are shifting. So your reality is shifting. What happens when the shift is too big that you lost so many things? Many ancient civilizations, because they longed for what they lost, they found ways to connect a bit, trying to connect as good as they could. So for example, they would take certain drugs. that would stop this thing happening to their mind that their senses were pulling into. They tried to stop that and then use the drugs to go back to what I used to see years ago. They never really went back because they were not there anymore, so it was going out. Now, that was from that time moving. Imagine a human being in the center coming out. Today we're out there trying to go in. Maybe we meet somewhere. That's what we try to do. Now, beings like that, okay, these are beings that could exist in the astral world. The astral world, you have all kinds of different beings. And many of the angels in the astral world have bird figures or bird faces, like that. Some of them have nearly human shapes. So you have all kinds of shapes. Some of them look like dragons, some of them look. So they're all different kinds of shapes. So when the change becomes bigger, they start using some figures to show the forces of nature that they lived in and don't have anymore. So they try to personify it through what we call the ancient Egyptian gods and all that. These are the nature forces that to them were real, very real, have become elusive, and so they started interpreting that way. And if you go around the world, all those things, those cave paintings and all that, and you say ancient astronauts and all that, it's not ancient astronauts. It's what lived here with the human beings in everyday life. And now the only thing that happens, they still live with us. But we're different dimensions. That's it. I mean, when we leave this physical dimension, when we just get out of this body, you'll be in that world again, so don't worry. You've never lost it. Yeah, you've never lost it, and that's the good thing. Because you've never lost it, and there's a longing to go back to it, that is what ties you to ancient Egypt. But why the Western civilization? So I'll just go a bit like that. You know those elongated skulls here? You find them all around the world. There are some scriptures that say that some of the Shamsuhor who lived, some of those dynasties, some of the inscriptions show that they had elongated skulls. And so later on, some of the Egyptians would draw their kings like Akhenaten with the elongated skull, that not necessary that he had the elongated skull. Maybe his mummy has it or doesn't have it. Some of the mummies have them, the very old mummies. But in reality, by drawing that kind of skull, you're sort of referring or connecting back to the time of the gods, when the gods walked among the men. So they call that time, they have a long Egyptian name for it, but some people call, some authors so the Septepi, that's the time before time, but in the pharaonic description it says the time when the netters, when the forces of nature, what we call gods today, but they refer to them forces of nature, not gods, because netters is NTR, is nature. So when the time that the netters walked among us,